So, let me get this straight, I say, my voice dripping with sarcasm, one hand on my hip, the other gesturing wildly at my petunias. My petunias are a threat to the, what was it again? Architectural integrity of this freaking place? Are you kidding me? The HOA weasel, some skinny dude in a polo shirt 2 sizes too small, just blinked at me, clutching his clipboard like it was a freaking life raft. "Mr. Miller," he squeaked, the color, it's not on the approved list." Approved list? For flowers? I swear to God, I almost lost it right there on my own goddamn front porch. I'm Mike, by the way, Mike Miller. And I just wanted to live in peace, man. I bought a house in Pleasant Valley Acres. Sounds nice, right? Birds chirping, kids playing, the whole 9 yards. What they don't tell you in the brochure is that this place is run by a freaking HOA. From hell. It started small, you know, like insidious. First, it was a warning about my mailbox. Apparently, the shade of brown I'd chosen was too rustic for the community aesthetic. Too rustic? It's a freaking mailbox, not a goddamn art installation. Then they fined me. Fined me! $50 because I left my garage door open for like 10 minutes while I was unloading groceries. 10 minutes. Like I'm running a freaking chop shop in there or something. Next, they had the audacity to send me a letter about my garden hose. My hose, people. Apparently, the bright green color was unapproved. Unfreaking approved. I had to get a beige hose. Beige? Who makes a beige garden hose? It's like they're trying to suck all the joy out of life, one earth-toned accessory at a time. And then, the bird feeder. Oh, the bird feeder incident. Apparently, attracting undesirable wildlife, aka birds, was a major offense. Like I'm running a freaking zoo over here. They're birds, for Christ's sake. They fly. What am I supposed to do? Put up a "no birds allowed" sign? Each fine, each warning, each passive-aggressive note tucked under my freaking welcome mat, it was building up. Like a pressure cooker, man. And these petunias, these innocent, purple, life-affirming petunias, they were about to be the goddamn trigger. I'm starting to think these people have a fetish for beige or something. These people are freaking insane, I ranted to my wife. It's like living in a goddamn beige dictatorship. So I did what any reasonable red-blooded American homeowner would do. I went to an HOA meeting. Figured I'd talk some sense into these people. Maybe find a few other sane individuals trapped in this suburban nightmare. Big mistake. Huge. The meeting was held in the community center, which looked like a freaking dentist's waiting room, only with worse lighting. And the board? Oh, the board. A collection of Stepford Wives and Ned Flanders clones, all sitting there with their smug smiles and their color-coded binders. And then there was her, Brenda Bartholomew, the HOA president, the queen bee of beige. This woman. She was like the final boss of homeowner association tyranny. Perfectly pressed pantsuit. Probably cost more than my car. Hair sprayed into a helmet that could withstand a hurricane. And a look on her face like she just smelled a fart that violated the community's odor regulations. "Mr. Miller," she said, my name sounding like a dirty word, "your decorations have been brought to our attention." "Decorations?" I shot back. "You mean my flowers? The things that grow out of the ground? Those decorations?" "They're non-compliant, Mr. Miller," Brenda said, her voice dripping with ice. "They clash with the harmonious aesthetic of Pleasant Valley Acres." "Harmonious aesthetic?" I almost choked. "Lady, everything in this place is the same shade of freaking beige. It looks like a goddamn desert. A desert with rules." "We have standards, Mr. Miller," she snapped, her beady little eyes narrowing, "and your purple petunias are a threat to those standards." "A threat?" I yelled. "They're flowers. What are they gonna do, stage a coup? Overthrow the government with their petals? The other board members just stared at me, like I'd grown a second head. Probably never seen anyone challenge Brenda's authority before. Bunch of freaking sheep. They are lowering property values, one of them piped up, some dude with a comb-over and a golf shirt. Lowering property values? I scoffed. By being pretty? By adding a little color to this monochrome wasteland? They're attracting bees, Brenda added with a shudder. Bees! I roared. Oh, the horror! We can't have bees in Pleasant Valley Acres. What's next? Banning butterflies? Freaking sunshine? Mr. Miller, Brenda said, her voice dangerously low. Your attitude is not helping your case. My attitude? I yelled. My attitude? Lady, you're trying to tell me what freaking color flowers I can plant. You're fining me for having a life. You're the one with the attitude problem. Needless to say, the meeting didn't go well. I got slapped with a fine, a big one, and a formal order to remove the offending petunias within 7 days. 7 days, or what? They were going to send in the floral SWAT team? I stormed out of that meeting, my blood boiling, my head about to explode. This woman, this HOA. They weren't just unreasonable, they were insane. And I, Mike freaking Miller, was not about to let them win. This was war. And I was going to fight fire with something a hell of a lot more impressive than freaking petunias. It wasn't a single event, really. It was more like a slow drip. A constant, irritating drip of HOA bullshit that finally eroded my patience and made me snap. There was the letter about my non-regulation welcome mat. It was a pineapple, for God's sake. Apparently, pineapples are too tropical for Pleasant Valley Acres. Then there was the warning about my bird bath. Not the existence of the bird bath, mind you, but the color. It was turquoise, and apparently turquoise is not an approved bird bath hue. Turquoise. Who the hell makes these rules? And then there was the email. Subject: Violation notice, improperly placed garden gnome. Improperly placed garden gnome? Are you freaking kidding me? I read the email, my blood pressure reaching critical levels. Apparently, Norman, yes, I named my gnome, was too close to the property line and was creating an obstruction to the harmonious visual flow of the neighborhood. Obstructing the what now? The harmonious flow of what? That was it. The screw this moment. The straw that broke the camel's back. The gnome that toppled the freaking empire. All right, Brenda, I said to myself, pacing my living room like a caged lion. You want to play hardball? Let's freaking play. You want to talk about harmonious flow? I'll give you freaking harmonious flow. You want to enforce ridiculous rules? I'll show you ridiculous. You want to mess with my petunias, my bird bath, my gnome? Oh, it's on like freaking Donkey Kong. I was done. Done with the polite notes, done with the HOA meetings, done with trying to reason with these people. You can't reason with crazy, man. You can't negotiate with beige-obsessed tyrants. It was time for a new strategy, a bold strategy, a strategy so insane, so over the top, so utterly American that it just might work. I started digging. Not in my garden this time. I started digging into the HOA itself. How it worked, how it was structured, how the hell Brenda Bartholomew got to be in charge of this whole freaking circus. I read the bylaws. Again, I researched local ordinances. I even started looking into HOA elections. Elections. That's when it hit me. Like a bolt of lightning. Like a perfectly placed garden gnome to the shins. The only way to truly change the system was to become the system. I wasn't just gonna fight Brenda. I was gonna replace her. I was gonna run for HOA president. Mike Miller, the guy who got fined for having the wrong color hose, was gonna run for freaking president of the Pleasant Valley Acres Homeowners Association. The idea was so absurd, so audacious, so utterly perfect that I started laughing. I was going to infiltrate the belly of the beast, dismantle the beige bureaucracy from the inside, and liberate the good people of Pleasant Valley Acres from the tyranny of, from the tyranny of bad taste and ridiculous rules. It wasn't about power, it was about freedom. The freedom to have a slightly overgrown lawn, to paint your house a color that wasn't beige, to put up a freaking hammock without getting a written warning. It was about restoring sanity, one ridiculously overturned rule at a time. And, yeah, okay, it was also about getting some sweet, sweet revenge on Brenda Bartholomew. The campaign trail, Pleasant Valley Acres edition, was unique. Oh, forget your boring town halls and your stuffy political rallies. I went full-on guerrilla warfare. My campaign slogan? Make Pleasant Valley Acres pleasant again. Subtle, right? I printed up flyers with pictures of my offending petunias, my too rustic mailbox, and of course, Norman the improperly placed gnome. I held town hall meetings in my garage, complete with folding chairs, a cooler full of beer, and a whiteboard where I'd scribbled down my proposed changes to the bylaws, mostly involving crossing out the word beige and replacing it with literally any other color. I even created a mock campaign website, Mike Miller for HOA President, because seriously, WTF. It had a picture of me, looking defiant, standing in front of my slightly too long grass, holding a garden gnome like a weapon. The website was filled with memes, jokes, and a running list of the HOA's most ridiculous rules, which, believe me, was a long list. And you know what? People loved it. Turns out, I wasn't the only one who was fed up with Brenda and her beige-colored dictatorship. Neighbors I'd barely spoken to before were stopping me on the street, shaking my hand, offering their support. They were tired of the fines, the warnings, the constant feeling of being watched, judged, and found wanting in the eyes of the HOA. "You go, Mike," one neighbor yelled from his car. "Take down the beige beast." "Finally, someone with some sense," another neighbor, Mrs. Gable, told me, practically shoving a plate of cookies into my hands. "That woman's been terrorizing this neighborhood for years. You give her hell, son." Even some of the board members started secretly approaching me, offering their support and, in some cases, their resignation letters. It was like a freaking underground resistance movement, right here in the heart of suburbia. Of course, Brenda and her cronies weren't about to let me waltz into the presidency without a fight. They tried to sabotage my campaign, spreading rumors that I was a radical who wanted to turn Pleasant Valley Acres into a hippie commune, which honestly wasn't that far off. They tore down my, admittedly somewhat provocative, campaign signs. They even reported me to the HOA for, wait for it, unauthorized campaigning. The irony was almost too much to handle. But I was ready for them. I had the people on my side. I had the truth on my side. And I had a whole lot of pent-up frustration just waiting to be unleashed. The Great Debate, that's what they called it. A head-to-head showdown between me and Brenda, held in the still beige community center a week before the election. It was epic. Brenda came prepared. She had charts, graphs, and statistics, all designed to prove that her strict enforcement of the rules was essential for maintaining property values and preserving the character of Pleasant Valley Acres. She talked about order, standards, and community harmony, all while looking like she was about to have an aneurysm. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "wants to turn our beautiful neighborhood into a free-for-all. He wants to allow unapproved colors, overgrown lawns, gnomes." She shuddered at the thought. Then it was my turn. I walked up to the podium, looked out at the crowd, which was packed, by the way, word had gotten around, and took a deep breath. Brenda, I said, my voice amplified by the microphone. You talk about order and standards, but what you're really talking about is control. You want to control what color we paint our houses, what kind of flowers we plant, how long we let our freaking grass grow. You're running this place like it's a goddamn prison, a beige prison. The crowd roared with laughter. Brenda's face turned a shade of red I didn't think was humanly possible. This isn't about property values, I continued, my voice rising in passion. It's about freedom. It's about the right to live in your own home, to express yourself, to have a freaking hammock without getting a written warning. I went on to outline my platform. Common sense, fairness, community building, getting rid of the ridiculous rules, opening up the HOA's finances, and most importantly, bringing a little bit of fun back to Pleasant Valley Acres. I'm not promising you a utopia, I said, looking directly at the audience. I'm just promising you a neighborhood where you can paint your mailbox whatever freaking color you want, where you can let your grass grow a little longer, where you can, I don't know, hang a freaking bird feeder without getting fined $50. The crowd went wild. They cheered, they clapped, they stomped their feet. Even some of the board members were smiling. Brenda, on the other hand, looked like she was about to spontaneously combust. You're a menace, Mr. Miller, she sputtered, her voice barely a whisper. I'm a homeowner, Brenda, I shot back, and I'm taking my neighborhood back. The debate ended with me looking like the clear winner, and Brenda looking like, well, like she needed a very long vacation, in a place with no HOAs, and lots of brightly colored flowers. The election results were not even close. It was a freaking landslide. I, Mike Miller, the guy who just wanted to be left alone to enjoy his slightly too long grass and his questionable taste in garden decor, had become the president of the Pleasant Valley Acres Homeowners Association. I'd beaten Brenda Bartholomew, the queen of beige, the tyrant of taste, well, you get the picture. The celebration was epic. Neighbors I'd barely spoken to before were hugging me, high-fiving me, offering me beers. There was cheering, there was laughter, there was even a spontaneous conga line that snaked its way through the formerly quiet streets of Pleasant Valley Acres. Someone, I suspect Mrs. Gable, had even started a bonfire, fueled by old HOA violation notices and copies of Brenda's meticulously color-coded Approved Exterior Paint Colors booklet. It was glorious. My internal monologue was a chaotic mix of emotions. Elation, obviously. I'd won. I'd taken down the HOA, freed my neighbors from the tyranny of beige, and secured my right to, well, to have a slightly messy garage and a questionable collection of lawn ornaments. Disbelief, definitely. I mean, me? HOA president? It was like a freaking movie plot. And, creeping in around the edges, a growing sense of, oh crap, what have I gotten myself into? I'd just become the man, the establishment, the HOA president. It was a terrifying thought. But, I reminded myself, I wasn't going to be like them. I wasn't going to become another Brenda Bartholomew. I was going to use my newfound power for good, for sanity, for making Pleasant Valley Acres a slightly less uptight place to live. My first act as president? The Great Rule Purge. I gathered the newly elected board, a mix of my supporters and a few surprisingly relieved former Brendaites, and we went to town on the HOA bylaws. We repealed the ridiculous restrictions on lawn ornament height, mailbox colors, garden hose hues, and bird feeder styles. We scrapped the no visible clutter rule for garages. Mine was staying exactly as it was, thank you very much. We even, after a heated debate, abolished the mandatory beige-only rule for exterior paint colors, though I suspect some residents will need therapy to overcome their beige addiction. Then, I fired Mr. Fussbudget, or rather, I reassigned him to, well, let's just say his new duties involve a lot less measuring of grass and a lot more cleaning up after community events. Poetic justice, right? Replacing Brenda's sycophants on the board was surprisingly easy. Most of them resigned voluntarily, realizing that their days of power tripping were over. I filled the vacancies with people who actually liked living in Pleasant Valley Acres, people who valued community, common sense, and, dare I say it, a little bit of fun. And because I'm a petty, petty man, I changed the font on all official HOA documents to Comic Sans, just to watch the remaining beige lovers squirm. The reactions from the residents were mixed. Relief, obviously. Gratitude, definitely. But also a healthy dose of shock and disbelief. "You mean, I can actually paint my front door red?" one neighbor asked me, her eyes wide with wonder. "Red, blue, purple, rainbow, go nuts," I told her with a grin. "Just, maybe, check with your spouse first." "I can leave my garage door open while I'm working in there?" another neighbor asked cautiously. "As long as you're not building a freaking bomb in there, yeah," I said. "It's your garage, man. Use it." Of course, there was some resistance. A small but vocal minority of die-hard Brenda supporters who mourned the loss of order and standards. They grumbled, they complained, they even tried to organize a Bring Back Beige movement, which thankfully failed miserably. But I had a plan for them, too. Remember all those ridiculous fines I and others got? Well, I decided that since those rules no longer exist, previous fines are null and void. And then I took it a step further. I presented my case. We had all of the documentation saved up of the fines she had issued. I had calculated it all. The motion passed, and Brenda was officially fined by the HOA for all of the ridiculous things she fined others for. It was the best day ever. But my presidency wasn't just about dismantling the old regime. It was about building a better community. I wanted Pleasant Valley Acres to be a place where people actually enjoyed living, where they felt a sense of belonging, where they weren't afraid to express themselves, within reasonable limits, of course. I wasn't about to let things descend into complete anarchy. So, we started organizing events, block parties, picnics, movie nights in the park, which, thankfully, was no longer just a beige patch of grass. We created a community garden where residents could grow their own vegetables and flowers, even purple petunias. We established a neighborhood watch program that focused on actual safety concerns, not on the color of someone's mailbox or the height of their grass. And, of course, I rewrote the HOA bylaws. From scratch. I threw out the old ridiculously restrictive rules and replaced them with, well, with common sense. Guidelines that focused on safety, property maintenance, and respect for neighbors, not on enforcing some arbitrary beige-tinted vision of suburban perfection. It wasn't all smooth sailing, of course. Being HOA president, even a reformed HOA president, involved a surprising amount of paperwork, meetings, and dealing with, well, with people's problems. But I handled it all with my characteristic humor, my newfound sense of purpose, and, occasionally, a strategically placed garden gnome. I even used my position to subtly, and not so subtly, troll Brenda and her remaining supporters. I instituted a Beige-Free Friday rule, encouraging residents to wear bright colors on the last Friday of every month. I organized a Worst HOA Rule contest, with the winner getting their most ridiculous fine waived. The improperly placed gnome incident was a strong contender. And I may or may not have commissioned a local artist to create a mural on the community center wall, depicting a group of rebellious gnomes overthrowing a beige-colored castle. It was a slow process, but gradually Pleasant Valley Acres started to change. The beige started to fade, replaced by splashes of color, by expressions of individuality, by life. And I, Mike Miller, the accidental revolutionary, was proud to have played a part in it. It's been a year since I, Mike Miller, went from being just another disgruntled homeowner to being, the freaking president of the Pleasant Valley Acres HOA. A year since I took on Brenda Bartholomew and her Beige Brigade and, against all odds, won. And you know what? It's been a pretty damn good year. Pleasant Valley Acres, it's different now. It's better. The beige hasn't completely disappeared, of course. Some people just like beige, I guess. But there's more color now, more individuality, more life. People are painting their houses in shades other than off-white. They're planting flowers that aren't just petunias. They're even, dare I say it, leaving their garage doors open for more than 5 minutes at a time. The HOA meetings are, they're still HOA meetings, but they're different now. Less combative, less beige. We actually talk to each other like human beings. We discuss things, we compromise, we even gasp, laugh. It's a freaking miracle. And Brenda? Well, there are two competing theories about what happened to Brenda Bartholomew. One is that she sold her house in a fit of rage and moved to a community with even stricter HOA rules, where she could finally live out her beige-colored dreams in peace. The other, more popular theory is that she's still here, in Pleasant Valley Acres, but she's become a bitter, isolated recluse, forever plotting her revenge. I like to imagine her lurking in her perfectly beige house, surrounded by her perfectly beige furniture, clutching her perfectly beige copy of the now-defunct HOA bylaws, muttering darkly about the downfall of civilization and the rise of the people. A new family moved in across the street a few months ago. The new neighbor, a guy named Tom, stopped by one day while I was adjusting the gnome display in my front yard. Norman needed a few friends and a catapult, don't ask. So, Tom said, looking around my yard with a mixture of amusement and bewilderment, I heard, you used to be the HOA president? I grinned. Yeah, let's just say I had some disagreements with the previous administration. Tom chuckled. Disagreements? I heard you staged a freaking coup. It was more of a peaceful transition of power, I said with a shrug, with a few colorful protests along the way. So, the petunias, Tom said, gesturing towards my still vibrant flower beds, and the mailbox, and the garage, all misunderstandings, I said with a wink. Let's just say I have a unique interpretation of the HOA bylaws. Tom shook his head, smiling. Well, he said, I gotta say I like what you've done with the place. It's different. It's fun. It's not what I expected from Pleasant Valley Acres. And that, right there, was the best compliment I could have asked for, because that's what I wanted. To make Pleasant Valley Acres a little less pleasant in the HOA sense of the word, and a little more alive. Am I satisfied? Hell yeah. I took on the system, I fought the good fight, and I won. I made a difference. I brought a little bit of color, a little bit of laughter, a little bit of sanity to this otherwise beige corner of suburbia. But am I done? No freaking way. There are always new battles to be fought, new rules to be challenged, new opportunities to make life interesting. I've got my eye on the HOA's community beautification budget. I'm thinking maybe a neighborhood-wide competition to build the most creative mailbox? Or perhaps a giant mosaic mural made entirely of recycled materials on the wall of the community center. The possibilities are endless, and as long as there are HOAs and power-hungry bureaucrats, I, Mike Miller, the accidental revolutionary, will be ready. armed with my wit, my sarcasm, and a healthy dose of, well, let's just call it creative noncompliance. Long live the revolution, and down with beige.